This basically is Whiskey Row.
Learn about the fascinating history of the bourbon industry in Louisville. Take a walk on the new Urban Bourbon Trail.
Kentucky grown soybeans, non-GMO. We have our Kentucky grown wheat, our salt, and our Kentucky water.
And meet a local businessman who's doing something more unconventional with his bourbon barrels. All that and more is coming up on this next edition of Downtown 360. Hi, I'm Nayaka Mosley. Welcome to Downtown 360, a show about some of the fun and quirky things happening in Louisville's downtown. Bourbon fans, listen up. This episode's all for you. While there's still several distilleries still operating in Kentucky, did you know that Louisville's downtown was the hub of the bourbon industry? One local bourbon buff's got the scoop.
Louisville really was the center of the bourbon universe. In the late 1800s, even up through the 1950s, there were several distilleries here in Louisville. There were like 7 just in the Shively area. These are Sanborn insurance maps. Main and Market Streets from about Brook to about 9th Street was considered Whiskey Row. W.L. Weller and Sons, Paul Jones and Company, Grabfelder and Company. There were so many distilleries that had their offices down there. They located here in Louisville because it was the center of transportation. You had the Ohio River where you could load whiskey onto the steamboats. You had the L&N Railroad. It was the way to get to the markets. You have Prohibition come along. It shuts down the distilleries. So there really wasn't any distillation from 1918 to 1933. One of the big myths about Prohibition is that it was illegal to drink. It was legal to drink. The thing that made it illegal was the people that produced and sold the alcohol beverage. So if you can't produce and sell it, then it puts the industry out of business. When Prohibition ends in 1933, a lot of people tried to come back into the business. But the big problem is that 1933 was the height of the Great Depression as well. And to make whiskey, you have to wait 4 years before you can get a good product out on the market. So you're tying up a lot of capital for 4 years in the middle of a depression. A lot of companies tried to come back and they started failing almost immediately. And you start seeing consolidation. Then you see the Second World War come along. You see even more consolidation as the big companies start buying up the small companies during the war in order to get their grain rations. The 50s is kind of the golden age of the bourbon industry because there were still a lot of distilleries out there. They were making a lot of product. They were doing quite well until the 1960s come along. In the 1960s, you have a generation that didn't trust anybody over 30, didn't want to drink the same thing that their parents drank. So you start seeing the growth of products such as vodka and tequila and gin. Late 70s, the single malt Scotch industry came about. Between the single barrel and the small batches, you started creating a new category that they considered super premium bourbons. Now we're going to try these bourbons. Old Forester is a brand made at Brown-Forman Distillery out in Shively. Old Fitzgerald is a brand made by Heaven Hill at 17th and Breckenridge. When you're doing a bourbon tasting, you want to use all of your senses. You look at the color. The color will tell you a couple of things. The darker it is, the older it is, or the higher proof it is, or a combination of the two. Old Forester. It's not a bonded bourbon. It's a mixture of 6 to 10-year-old bourbons. It's got a nice dark amber color. And when you smell this bourbon, the first thing you'll notice is that there's a very nice caramel tone to it. It comes from the wood of the barrel. But it also has a very nice fruity and spicy tones to it. And then the fun part, you get to drink it.
Taste all that.
Old Fitzgerald is a brand that dates back to the 1870s. When you look at this one, you notice it's a little bit lighter color because this is a bonded bourbon, which means all of the bourbon in this bottle came from the same year. And it's probably just a 4-year-old bourbon. It's going to smell quite a bit different. You've got the caramel, but you don't get that spice at all. But then when you taste it, it's a much different bourbon. There's no burst of spice at all. An interesting combination of dry wood and sweet caramel. But it has a very nice long finish to it, and it is a nice little bourbon to drink on.
If you're interested in sampling some of Kentucky's best bourbons, grab a few friends and hit the new Urban Bourbon Trail right here in Louisville.
There's a new way to explore downtown Louisville that's creating a buzz.
The Urban Bourbon Trail is Louisville's celebration of our state's very rich bourbon heritage, and especially what we have in the city. We produce a lot of bourbon. In fact, a third of the world's bourbon still in the city limits. We don't have a public tour, so we don't have a lot on the ground that the public can feel in touch. So we came up with a concept that we thought would be our answer to that, and they are the 8 restaurants and bars that have over 50 bourbons on stock.
The program's simple to use. Just pick up a passport at any of the participating bars and restaurants or the Convention and Visitors Bureau.
And it comes with pages that describe the 8 bars and restaurants that are part of the Urban Bourbon Trail.
Then go to one of the locations and order a drink or appetizer.
Here we've had an old-fashioned bourbon which has some cherry and some lemon in it, mixed with the single barrel bourbon, which is very good.
I've been having the first drink neat and then I add ice after that. I really like this one. Knocked the wind out of me at first.
This couple's visiting from Cincinnati and planned their trip down the Urban Bourbon Trail.
It's a great way to see the town. It's a great way to learn some of the history. It's a great way to know that what's around and to get to meet interesting people.
With its colorful history and large bourbon selection, the Seelbach Bar sees its fair share of trailgoers.
It's a beautiful bar. It's everything a bar should be. Dark, lots of woods.
Not everyone orders bourbon, but Edward likes to encourage visitors to at least try the drink.
We have people coming from all over to do this. They can't believe that we have 75 different bourbons, so kind of here to walk them through the whole process, tell them what bourbon is exactly, and give our recommendations.
Once you've ordered something, the restaurant staff will stamp your passport.
There's no time limit. You can enjoy it like you would bourbon, very slowly.
If you make it to all 8 locations, you can turn in your passport to the CVB and receive a free souvenir. It's a great way for tourists and even locals to explore what downtown has to offer.
It's great that Kentucky's finally realized what a great asset they have in bourbon. I mean, it's unique to Kentucky, and finally, I think we're realizing the value of that.